All right, good afternoon, everybody. You are here for the Berkeley International Office Travel and Visa webinar for Fall 2023. So I am Erin Skelly. I'm the Assistant Director for Student Services at Berkeley International Office, and I'm here to talk to you about traveling over the winter break or travel in general. I mean, this could be travel for any time period of the year. So I'll get started. We're going to go over an overview of the workshop, and we will also kind of go through all of the slides and have time for questions and answers. So what I would like, and that would be helpful to me, is if you have questions, if you can see them if you can post them in the Q&A section, because then I can make sure I get to all your questions. I mean, there is a chat and you're welcome to say some things in the chat. I will look at the chat to make sure, but it's most helpful if you'll post to the Q&A. I will stop and take time for questions at different points in the webinar. So I would say feel free to post your questions, but I'm not going to address them until I stop and start looking at the questions. And your question may be answered as we go through the webinar. Okay, so let's get started. All right, first, overview of the workshop. So first, we're going to go over your F1 and J1 documents to make sure you know what kind of documents that you have and what those documents look like. We're also going to go over automatic revalidation. If you're traveling to Mexico or Canada and you have an expired US visa, there's a special exception for that. We'll also go over basic entry or re-entry to the US. Then we'll have a travel Q&A. We'll go over a visa process for those of you whose visas have expired and you need a new visa. And then we'll go over a visa process Q&A. Okay, so first step, I want to make sure you're in the right place. So is this webinar for me or for you? Actually, it's for me because I'm teaching it. So you should be in this webinar if you have an I-20 or DS 2019 from UC Berkeley. So this webinar is not intended for students of other schools, for students whose I-20 or DS 2019 comes from a different school. We have some students who are studying at Berkeley who may have documents from a different school, and we want you to get your visa and immigration advising from your home school because they might have slightly different information for you. So you're a continuing F1 or J1 degree-seeking student, or you are a UC EAP exchange student. So that means you're an enrolled student, you're enrolled right now, and you're going to be traveling over the winter break. We had an earlier webinar that was for new students who are coming for the first time. This isn't really intended for new students. We're talking more to continuing students. So you're a continuing student or you're on OPT or post-completion J1 academic training. And you're a J student. You are not a J1 scholar. So that means on your DS 2019, if you look at section 4, if you're a J1, you are in either a student non-degree, a student bachelor's, a student master's, or a student doctorate program on your DS 2019. We have another category that we support here at UC Berkeley called J1 Scholars, often postdocs, visiting researchers, or professors. And this webinar is not for that group. This is for students who are either enrolled or on post-completion training. And you're here because you have questions about travel and immigration requirements. If you have other questions, this webinar is not for you. This webinar is not for you if you're here because you want to ask about employment or changing your visa or you have academic issues. That's for our advising. We're here to talk about travel. So I see if I'm in my first semester, I will not need to be on this call. So if you have not yet arrived, if you are not currently enrolled at UC Berkeley, then we had a previous webinar earlier this week for new students who are joining us in January or in the future. But if you're already here and fall 2023 was your first semester, then yes, this is right for you. But it's not right for you if you're a student who's starting in the future and hasn't yet arrived, because we won't have all the information that you need if you're a new student who hasn't yet arrived at UC Berkeley. All right. So that's who should be here. And maybe just because it's helpful for me, I can see a show of hands. I'd be interested to see how many of you are F1? Can you raise your hand if you're F1? You have an I-20? Okay. Bunch of F1s. Okay, F1s, go ahead and feel free to put your hands down. And then I'm assuming the rest of you are J1s because if you're not an F1, then you'd be a J1. If you're in a different visa category that's not F1 or J1, this is also not for you. Okay, thanks everybody for raising your hands. If you've got your hands up, feel free to go ahead and put it down now. All right. So just a reminder, please put your questions in the Q&A box. That's helpful for me instead of the chat. So we are going to go through all of your travel and visa requirements. So for right now, please hold off on your questions because I'm probably going to answer your question and tell you what documents you need while we go through the webinar. Okay. So first, required entry document. So if you're an enrolled student, that means you are a student who's at the university, you're currently enrolled and you're still working on your degree. If you're traveling, you're going to need the following documents. You'll need your passport, you'll need your Form I-20 or DS-2019 with a valid travel signature within 12 months of your entry date. And we'll talk about these documents in a moment. And original I-20 means that, or DS-2019 means you printed out the I-20 or DS-2019, you have a physical I-20 or DS-2019. I think somebody's off mute. I'm going to mute you. Please post your questions in the Q&A. That's better than everyone trying to talk. So if you have a question, please post it in the Q&A. So you actually need to print out your I-20 or DS-2019 if you received it by email, and then you need to sign it with your human hand. You must sign it by hand. We are permitted to sign electronically, but you are not permitted to sign electronically. So you've got your passport, valid for 6 months in the future, with a valid non-immigrant visa inside, meaning a valid unexpired F1 or J1 visa. You have your original I-20 or DS-2019 with a valid travel signature within 12 months of your entry. And then you have evidence of your financial resources. That's proof of your financial support. Whatever your current funding is, you should also always have up-to-date funding documents when you're traveling in case you're asked. Proof of your Berkeley enrollment. So print your spring or your fall Cal Central showing your current full-time enrollment. If you're traveling over the winter break, you should have proof of your future enrollment for the spring to show that you are, in fact, a continuing student who is properly enrolled for the spring. And proof of your SEVIS fee payment. That's a fee that you may have paid a long time ago when you first got your I-20 and first got your visa. And then be aware, officers may ask you questions about your reasons for entering the US, where you're traveling, or about your academic program. If you have any problems with re-entry, contact our office as soon as possible. So right now, we're just going to go into different groups and different entry documents. So this was for enrolled students. We also have some students who have already graduated and are on F1 OPT or F1 STEM OPT. If you are an F1 OPT student, you're in two situations, and travel for you can be a little bit more complex. If you are an F1 student and your OPT is still processing, it has not yet been approved, you don't have your OPT card, then you will travel with a valid passport, a valid F1 visa stamp, an I-20 with a travel endorsement within the last 6 months. So you should have your OPT I-20 and it needs to be signed within the last 6 months. You should have your I-797 notice of action receipt. So your OPT receipt notice, that's evidence that you've actually applied for the OPT. You'll need proof of your funding, and it's recommended that you have a job offer letter if you do have an offer. So that's if you're traveling while pending. So that means you've applied for OPT, you don't have your EAD card. Again, can you please post your questions in the Q&A section instead of the chat, please? That would be very helpful. The slides will be shared later with everyone who signed up for the webinar. So yeah, please post your questions in the Q&A for me. So OPT students, if you are approved for OPT, you need a valid passport, valid F1 visa stamp, and you need an I-20 with a travel endorsement within the last 6 months. So your OPT I-20. You need your EAD card, your OPT card. You should have proof of your employment, your job offer or employment verification letter, and proof of funding. And if you're on approved OPT, then I would recommend that you request an updated I-20 that has your new employment information on it and that shows your OPT is approved. That would be really helpful. And we have all of these details on our OPT travel page. Okay, so I'd like you guys maybe to wait a little while longer before posting your questions, because every question you've asked so far, we're going to be answering them. So go ahead and wait until we get a little farther, because we're going to talk about each of the travel documents. We're going to talk about different travel documents, okay? So just wait a little bit longer, and then when we have a pause, go ahead and ask your questions, so that we don't end up with lots of questions that you already have answers to. All right, so finally, our last category of students who may be traveling are J1 students who are after graduation and they're working in the US on their academic training. If this is you, you need a valid passport, you need a valid J1 visa in your passport, you need a DS 2019 that has your academic training details and a recent travel endorsement within the last 12 months. You need our academic training verification letter that we issued you with your academic training. You need your employment verification letter from your academic training employer, and then proof of financial support for yourself and any J2 dependents who are traveling with you. And your financial support might be included in your employer letter if it indicates your salary. Okay, so let's go through what all of these documents are. Okay, so you've got your passport. That's clear. It's your passport. It has your photo in it. It should be valid for at least 6 months to the future. We recommend that it's valid for 12 months. Usually your passport can be renewed inside the US. If you need to renew your passport, you would need to contact your embassy or consulate in the US to find out what you need to do to renew your passport. If it's expiring very soon and you're wanting to travel over winter break, that can be tricky for you. You may need to see what you need to do to get that passport renewed. Your visa. So your visa is an entry document for the US. You should have an F1 or J1 visa stamp in your passport unless you are Canadian. Canadian citizens don't require a visa for US entry, or if you were in the US and you changed your visa category to F1 without leaving the US, you might not yet have a new visa in your passport, and you might need to get one the next time that you're traveling. But your visa has information on it, and that includes your name and information about the visa itself. And the visa has an expiration date. The visa is only used for entry. So if you leave the US and you need to get back to the US, you need all of your valid travel documents, and your visa needs to be unexpired at the date that you're entering the US to cross the border. If you're in the US and this visa stamp is expired, that's okay. It doesn't matter. The visa is only used for entry to the US. So if your visa expires and you're not traveling, you don't need to worry about it. But if you do leave the US, you need to be aware that if your visa is expired, you need a new visa before you can come back to the US, and visa applications will take time. Your I-20 or DS 2019. So when we talk about travel signature on the I-20 is on the second page, and you'll see a travel endorsement section. on the DS 2019, it's on the first page. So for enrolled students, your travel signature on your I-20, if you look at it right now, that signature is valid for 1 year. So many of you don't need a signature right now because maybe you have a more recent one. It needs to be valid at the time that you're re-entering the US. So that signature is valid for 12 months. That means on the day you're entering the US again, that signature should be no more than 12 months old. If you're on OPT or STEM OPT, the signature can't be more than 6 months old. Your DS 2019, that is for J1s, and for J1s, that's on the first page of your DS 2019. And your signature right there is valid for 12 months of travel or until the end of your DS 2019, whichever comes first. Okay, so your travel endorsement. You always need a valid travel endorsement for re-entry, and it's valid for 12 months if you're on an I-20, 6 months if you're on an I-20 or DS 2019, 6 months if you're on F1 OPT. So again, take a look at how do you know what the validity date is. We'll look at the date issued under the travel endorsement and see that date. And there's always a date there, so make sure that you check that. So additional documentation that's needed, F1s, if you're on post-completion OPT or STEM, you also need your EAD card, or if your EAD has not been approved, you need your receipt notice. So that's just if you're after graduation and you're a student who's on OPT or STEM OPT. And after a re-entry, it's always good to check your I-94 information online. So right now, don't worry about it. If you come into the US and you don't get a stamp in your passport, it's pretty common now that they don't stamp you when you re-enter. I think there may be some ports of entry that do still stamp you, but you'll have an electronic record of your re-entry the next time you enter the US. Okay, so if you're traveling and your visa is expired, so the visa stamp in your passport has expired, but you're going to Canada, Mexico, or the adjacent islands around the United States, and we have a whole list of those islands. If you're going to one of those places for 30 days or less, then you may be able to re-enter the US using an expired visa. Like if you're just going to on a quick trip to Canada for less than 30 days, your F1 visa has already expired, that's okay. There are procedures for traveling just to Canada and back for less than 30 days, and you can reuse that expired visa. But the rule for this is you can only be traveling back and forth between that country. So if you go to Canada and come back to the US, that's fine. But if you go to Canada and then you go to your home country and then come back through Canada, that isn't okay. You're just going to Canada or Mexico or one of the adjacent islands for less than 30 days. You may need to check if a citizen of your country needs a visa to enter Canada or Mexico. So if you're visiting another country, it's not the US, I don't know what their visa requirements are. So you'll have to look up their embassy and look up what's required for citizens of your home country to visit Canada, Mexico, or one of the islands. But this is just a special rule that if you're just traveling to one of these places for a short period of time, they'll allow you to come back to the US without needing a new visa. So it does not apply to students or scholars if you go to Canada or Mexico and then you apply for a visa and you don't feel like waiting to finish getting your visa. That's not okay. If you apply for a visa, you have to wait for the visa and then get your visa before you can come back. Or if you're from Iran, Sudan, North Korea, or Syria, you're not permitted to use automatic revalidation. Or if your documents have expired, like you've graduated, your exchange program is over, your DS 2019 or I-20 is expired, you can't use automatic revalidation. Or if you entered under a visa waiver program, you're not eligible for that. So just be aware, if you try to use automatic revalidation, if you're not eligible, that's considered visa fraud, and you could get in big trouble. The main time we see students asking us questions about this is like, if you actually were trying to get a new visa and you go to Canada and you don't want to wait anymore because your visa is taking a long time, it's not okay to try to use automatic revalidation to come back because you are not in a category that's eligible because while you were gone, you applied for a visa. Okay, so how do you get a new travel signature for your I-20 or DS 2019? So there are 5 different ways. One, you can sign in for drop-in virtual advising and receive a same-day electronic signature during your advising session. If you click the link and you'll all get a copy of this PowerPoint, there's some instructions on how to prepare. Basically, you need a PDF copy of your I-20 that we can add a travel signature to, and you need to make sure it's your most recent I-20 because we have to add a signature to your most recent I-20. You can visit our in-person drop-in hours for the same day travel signature. If you do this, you need to bring a printed out copy of your I-20 or your DS 2019. We don't want you coming and not have something for us to sign, and we don't offer printing services at our office. So you need to visit our office with a printed out I-20 or DS 2019, and we'll give you a hand signature. Or you can just request a replacement I-20 or DS 2019. Just request a fresh one that will have a new travel endorsement. This takes 5 business days. We have a replacement document request that's an online form. You submit that to our office. You tell us, I need a travel signature, and we'll email you a new I-20 or DS 2019 within 5 business days. Or finally, you could drop off your I-20 or DS 2019 at our office, and we'll give you an updated signature, and it will be ready for you to pick up 5 business days later. So that's if you don't want to wait to get your signature same day. And finally, we're going to have some express travel signature day events where we'll just be doing travel signatures for these periods. That'll be December 5th in person at Berkeley International Office from 10 to 12, and December 6th virtually 1 to 4 p.m. So during these hours, we're just doing travel signatures. It'll be a faster line. We're just doing signature after signature. So that's another way before your winter break travel to get some signatures. But if you need a signature before that, you have drop-ins, you have the replacement document, you have a number of different ways to get a signature. Okay, so you have all your documents, you've got your I-20, you've got your passport, you've got a valid visa, you've got your signature, you have proof of your financial support, proof of your enrollment, you're ready to come into the US. So how do you prepare to get here? We advise you to carry all your documents with you, not in your checked bag. If it's possible. So checked bag means the bag that goes under the plane, essentially. You want this in your bag that's with you on the airplane, in your hands when you go to Customs and Border Protection. If possible, arrive during our office hours, Monday through Friday from 10 to 12 or 1 to 4. If you have a problem during arrival, you can request that Customs and Border Protection call our office if we're open. But be aware we are going to be closed over holiday periods. We will have emergency contact information. We'll send you an email towards the end of the year about that. Don't bring any restricted items. So a lot of things have restrictions. If you're traveling with medicine, food, or pets, there's a lot of rules, and you need to make sure that you're following the rules and that you're allowed to enter the country with those items. And a reminder, we're reminding students of this every time, medical and recreational marijuana or cannabis is illegal under US federal law. If you are in possession of this or you use this substance, that could result in you being deported from the US. So just be aware that this is an issue. And that also includes having paraphernalia. So drug paraphernalia is illegal to bring in the US unless it's a prescribed paraphernalia for authentic medical conditions such as diabetes. So we do have students who are deported. I don't know, we often have a case each year of a student who is in possession of drug paraphernalia or marijuana or cannabis, or there's evidence that they're a user and they're stopped and deported at the border. So please be mindful of this. It is not a great way to be entering the US. Also, be aware that Customs and Border Protection can inspect your electronic devices. That means your phone, your computer. So you can see some tips for how to prepare your devices for travel, because if you're asked to provide your device, you want to be mindful of what's being presented on your device. Also be mindful of what you're presenting in your social media profiles. What are you presenting to the world about yourself? And would you be okay with, I don't know, an immigration officer seeing that information about you? Okay, so I'm going to take a pause here. The next thing we'll talk about is applying for a new visa if your visa is expired. But before I do that, I'm going to look at the questions about travel and entry to the US. Okay, so I'm looking at the questions. For enrolled students, do we repay the CVIS fee again, or should we just show proof of payment for the CVIS fee of the first time? Yeah, you don't have to pay the CVIS fee again. You just need to have proof of your CVIS fee payment that you paid the first time you paid the CVIS fee. You definitely don't have to pay again. You pay once per CVIS record. When traveling to Mexico City, what documents do I need for re-entry to the US? So we went over all of the documents that you need for re-entry. There's documents for enrolled students. There's documents if you're a student who's on OPT. There's documents if you're a student who's on J1 academic training. So I would recommend that you take a look at information in this PowerPoint and on our website about required entry documents. And you'll also get a copy of this after this webinar. I don't know the requirements for traveling to Mexico. You'd have to find out what the requirements are to go to Mexico if you're not a citizen of Mexico. Is there anything we need from bio or any other US immigration office before contacting our embassies for passport renewal? No, I mean, it's likely every consulate or embassy is different. I would first go to their webpage. You likely don't need to contact them. Usually they'll have a webpage and they'll have instructions on the webpage for what you have to do to renew your passport and what documents are required. They may require proof of your current US immigration documents, like your I-20 or your passport, or proof of your enrollment. I don't know, each country is different. So you may want to see what their requirements are to see if there is anything that you need from our office. If our F1 visa is expired, if our US visa is expired, do we need to get a visa to re-enter the US if we travel to Canada? So if you only travel to Canada, if you just go to Canada and back to the US and you're there for less than 30 days, you can use what's called automatic travel revalidation. And that allows you to use your expired F1 or J1 visa along with all your other normal documents, your I-20, your passport, proof of enrollment, all that stuff. But you can use the expired visa as long as you're going directly to Canada and back in less than 30 days. And you haven't done one of these things. You haven't applied for a visa while you're in Canada or Mexico or wherever you're going, and you're not from Iran, Sudan, North Korea, or Syria. And your other documents are valid. Okay, I've interned this summer and I have a CPT I-20 signed this summer. Can I use the CPT as the new I-20 because the travel endorsement is recent and definitely covers 12 months. Yeah, you're good. So anytime you get a new I-20, this is a great question. I love it. Anytime you get a new I-20, that I-20 replaces the old ones. You'll keep the old ones in a safe place, keep them in a file on your computer or whatever. But the newest one, you can see the issue date on page 1 that the advisor signed it. The newest one is the one you should be using. And that new one, we always give you a new travel signature when we create a new I-20. So if you got a CPT I-20 this summer and it was signed for travel, let's say in August, great. Yeah, that signature is valid for 12 months. So you do not need a new travel signature. So my understanding is that the travel signature on the I-20 can be used for 1 year as long as it's not expired. You don't need to sign a new one every time you go abroad, right? That is right. Yeah, you can save yourself a trip to the office. So look at that travel signature area, and that's why we're kind of making it easy for you guys to find that area on your I-20 or DS 2019 and take a look at that signature. If it's still valid, if it's less than 12 months, then you don't need a signature. We usually recommend you get it signed within 10 months, just in case something weird happens while you're traveling and you get delayed. But you know, if you've got plenty of time, you don't need a valid signature. And it's better for you to wait so that you get a signature later and it'll be valid for a longer period of time. And you definitely don't need a signature every time you travel. And if you request one, we'll probably turn you away because we'll say the signature you have is fine. So you kind of waste a trip to the office or you waited in line for an advisor to tell you you don't need that, or we'll reject your request for a replacement. May I ask, what document counts as evidence of financial resources? Can I use the same one I used when I first came to the US? So proof of financial support would be proof of, you know, whatever your support is, whether it's personal bank statement or if it's financial support from your department at UC Berkeley. You'd want something that's been updated within the last 6 months. So if that financial support, your bank statement or your letter from your department, if that's older than 6 months, it's good to have updated financial support when you're traveling in case you're asked for proof of your funding. Okay, does showing my Cal Central homepage, is that valid of proof of enrollment, or is there a specific something we have to print? You could print out your Cal Central homepage as long as it shows your name and your enrollment units. You could also print out an enrollment verification through Cal Central that will show your enrollment units. Either of those things would do, but you just want to make sure that what you print out is showing your name and all of the units. So just to confirm, if my I-20 has a signature dated this past August, then I will only need to have a new signature before next August. Is this correct? Yes. So in this example, I would say you should get a new travel signature before you leave for summer break. So you don't need one now before winter break, but I would recommend that you get a new I-20 maybe in May before you leave for any summer travels, because then it'll be good for you to have an updated I-20. But in theory, if you left the US and you came back in July, that signature would still be valid if your previous signature was from August. Can you tell me again, what's the regulation for the medicines you carry? Is it a problem with entry or exit from the state? For example, if I buy vitamins, which country's regulation should I look up? My homeland or the US? Will it affect my visa? That's a good question. That slide that I showed you, when you get a copy of the presentation, it has a link to restricted items. So you can go directly to that webpage from Customs and Border Protection. And this is about entry to the US. So the US has rules about medications. And I mean, I think generally vitamins are not restricted, but I don't know if there's weird stuff out there. If it's something you bought in the US and it's legal in the US, that's not an issue. But we can't answer what's legal in your home country. Generally, this is about prescription medicines, that you have a prescription medicine, something that's regulated, and it may or may not be allowed in the US. There's some medications in other countries that you're allowed without a prescription, but in the US, you would have to have a prescription. So I would say if you're traveling with medicines into the US that did not come from the US, then you may want to check out restricted items and make sure you're okay with what you're carrying into the US. But I don't know what your homeland's rules are about things that come from outside of your homeland. I'm on F1 OPT with a valid passport, but an expired visa stamp. I'm not a citizen of the countries listed. Can I qualify for automatic revalidation? Yes, as long as you're just traveling directly to Canada or Mexico or one of the adjacent islands for less than 30 days. You're the same, you can qualify for automatic revalidation. You just need to have all your required OPT travel documents, and you need to follow the rules for automatic revalidation. When my visa is expired, is it possible to renew it without leaving the US? If not, can I get an estimate of the amount of time it will take to renew it in my home country? Automatic revalidation doesn't apply in my case. And I want to say something about automatic revalidation. You're not getting a new visa when you do that. It's just letting you use an expired visa to re-enter from Canada or from Mexico. You don't get any new visa. I want to make sure that's clear. So no, if your visa expires, there's no way to renew your visa inside the US. The only way you can get a new visa is if you leave the US, you apply at an embassy or consulate abroad, and then you re-enter the US using that new visa. So you can only do it outside of the US. And we will be talking in just a moment about applying for a new visa. So I'm going to finish up these questions. And then I want to get to talking about applying for a new visa. Can I renew my F1 visa in Canada? So we'll talk about visa renewal in a minute, but unless you're a citizen of that country, we usually advise you to apply for a new visa when you're in your home country. It's usually less complex. It's easier for that country to evaluate your documents. There can be some risk applying for a new visa in a third country. One of the risks is if you're delayed, you're stuck in the third country and not in your home country. If you're denied, you'd have to leave and you'd have to go probably back to your home country and apply for a visa there. It is possible to renew in a third country. It's just you need to be aware that there's a little higher risk involved with that. We definitely do have students who apply for visas in Canada, but you'd need to see what's required for you to go to Canada as a citizen of your country. What's their current processing time? Do you have a plan for if you're delayed? How long can you stay in Canada? What's your time limitations? And just be aware that you don't control everything. Okay, so there's some questions about visas. I'm not going to answer them now because we are talking about that in a moment. Do we need a new I-20 if we renewed our passport in the US? I now have two passports, one with a visa and one which is valid. You don't need a new I-20 unless your name changed on the new passport. But when you travel, you will likely need to travel with your new passport, using it as the official passport, and your old passport, you'll show the visa that's in the old passport because the visa is still valid even if it's in the old passport. For the bank statement, how much money should I show? Should it be larger than the number shown in my I-20? You just need to show the amount that's listed in your I-20 or the amount that's needed until your completion date if that's less than the amount listed in your I-20. So your I-20 shows one academic year of funding. So you need to have proof that you have at least one academic year of funding. Or if you're graduating next semester, it could just be that you have proof of funding and living expenses for one semester. What things do we need to travel domestically, like from state to state? We recommend that you do take all of your travel documents with you if you're traveling outside of the Bay Area. It's not required to get on an airplane to have your I-20 or to have your visa, but we just recommend having those documents in case anything goes wrong, if you have interactions with the police or you have to prove evidence of your legal status. But, you know, in terms of traveling between states, there isn't any specific requirement other than as a non-immigrant in the US, you're always required to have your immigration documents with you. So take your immigration documents. To get on a plane, you need a government issued ID. That might be your passport. It might be a California ID, a California state ID or driver's license, something like that. Do financial resources evidence should be updated according to the current date, which means I can't use evidence of financial resource I used for this year's August. We recommend that the financial resources be no more than 6 months old at the time that you'd be showing the documents. Okay, I checked my I-20 and it's 27th March to 2023, and I'll be re-entering on the 12th of January, 2024. You mentioned bio recommends 10 months. Should I get a new signature for safety measures? I mean, I think you're okay unless you really feel like there's a significant, unless you feel like there's a significant reason you might be delayed. You know, if for some reason you are delayed, you can always request a virtual signature. I mean, we could certainly get that to you by March. So I think you're probably okay. But we're also okay with giving you a signature if you'd rather get it now and you're planning to travel during the spring. So I think it's more of a question of, are you planning to travel during the spring or are you worried about delays? I'm leaving the US from December 7th to January 10th, which is more than 30 days. Is that okay? Yeah, that's fine. There's no issues with that. The only issue with that would be if you wanted to use this automatic visa revalidation, like if your visa's expired, you wanted to go to Canada and come back using an expired visa, that trip is limited to 30 days or less. But no, otherwise, yeah, you're free to travel during the break. You just need to be back in time for classes. You definitely can't be back more than be out more than 5 consecutive months. But I mean, you need to be back for classes anyway. I'm not a citizen, but I'm a permanent resident of Canada. Would I be able to renew my F1 visa in Canada as a PR? Yeah, if you're a permanent resident of Canada, it's usually simpler to get a new visa in Canada because you are a resident. So for you, that might be different than somebody who is another third country national. So generally, if that's the case, there's less issues because since you're a permanent resident there, you have more reason to be applying there. It's easier for them to evaluate your documents. Okay, so I am going to move on to talk about getting a new visa. So for those of you whose visas are expired, so we'll talk about the visa process overview. There's a few things in this slide that don't apply to you if you're a continuing student. These first 3 things that say new students, new or readmitted, this is all about getting your first I-20, and you've already done that. You have your I-20, and you've already paid the SEVIS fee, so you don't need to worry about that. So you already have your I-20 or you have your DS 2018, but you know your visa's expired, you're traveling, and you know you need a new visa before you can get back. I will say winter break is a short period. Be aware that there's not a lot of time to get a new visa if you're doing this over winter break. So first thing you need to do is complete the online visa application form DS-160. You'll pay the visa application fee. Then you may or may not need to schedule a visa interview. Some students are able to have an interview waiver. That's at the discretion of the embassy. Often you may or may not qualify for a waiver if you've already previously had a visa in the same category within the last year. But it's really up to the embassy whether or not you need an interview if you're applying again in the same category. So if you do have an interview, you need to schedule it and attend the visa interview. And then if all goes well, you'll get your passport back with the visa. So Our recommendation, apply early. If you know you need a new visa, start working on it now. Apply for your visa, get an early interview appointment. Wait times for visa appointments and processing vary by location, and you want to apply as early as possible. We have a link here. You'll get this when we email you the PowerPoint slides. You can find your consulate location and current wait times there. You can look it up and see what the current processing is. Visa application fees, forms, and appointment scheduling are all accessible online. So you need your I-20 or DS 2018. Again, you know what this is. It'll ask you for your SEVIS ID number, and that's listed at the top left of the F1 I-20, the top right of the J1 DS 2019. The SEVIS fee payment. You should have already paid this when you came to the US for the first time as an F1 or J1. You just need to have your receipt. So you can go to fmjfee.com, click on check I-901 status, and then follow the instructions to look up your fee payment and print your receipt. You don't have to pay it again. That's not necessary. So find the US consulate or embassy near you. So go to usembassy.gov and then find your local consulate or embassy, check their website for specific visa application instructions, and make sure you're looking for instructions for how to apply for a non-immigrant visa. They may link you to a third-party website for visa application instructions, but please don't just randomly Google for this. Go to usembassy.gov and go from there. There's a lot of really scammy websites out there that want to steal your information and or your money. So make sure you're always going from a legitimate site to your consulate. And if your consulate website takes you to another website, that's okay. Some of them use third-party websites or third-party payment. The Form DS-160 is an online application that's used for all non-immigrant visas. One thing I want to be 100% clear with you guys, visas cannot be issued from inside the US. You have to be physically present in the country in which you're applying for the visa. So you can't apply for a visa online and then mail your passport to your friend in your home country and then have them send it in. That's illegal and it's a big deal. You should not do that. You have to actually be there. You need to be physically present in the country. You need to send your passport in while you are physically present in the country. So you go to the form DS-160, select your embassy location. When you go through the application at the end, you'll print a barcode and you'll print out information, your confirmation page. Some tips, your US point of contact. You can use our address, phone, and the name of the DSO who signed your I-20 or DS 2018. Or you can use a US-based family member or friend as your US point of contact. It's up to you. Address where you'll stay in the US. If you don't have an address, if you don't know your long-term address when you're returning to the US, you need to at least have a temporary one. It's okay if you don't know where you'll live for long-term, but you have to sleep somewhere when you arrive. So where are you sleeping? Provide an address where you may stay when you first arrive, like a hotel, your friend's house. You need to have something to fill in here. If you know your long-term address, that's fine. You'll upload your photo while you complete the form, and you can check the photo guidelines on the official website. You'll pay a visa fee. It's sometimes called the MRV fee or the NIV fee. Payment instructions are specific to your local embassy, and you can see fees on the Department of State website. Make sure to print your receipt. And then you'll schedule your visa interview. Don't wait to schedule. The appointment times can be long if you're traveling over summer, or there may be delays over holiday periods. So there's holidays coming up. So applications can slow down, interviews can be harder to get. So schedule as soon as possible. If you do have an interview, you'll need your passport, your I-20 or DS 2019, proof of your enrollment, proof of your funding, SEVIS fee payment. You'll need the DS-160 confirmation page, and then additional documentation if you're on OPT or J1, like your EAD card, proof of your employment, or your J1 proof of employment. The embassy may tell you additional documents. These are basic documents, but you may need other documents as well. Be mindful of security at the embassy. It may take you time to get in there, so arrive early, wait for your number. You've likely already been through an interview, so you know it's short. It's only going to be a few minutes. The interview wants to understand what you're studying, that you have non-immigrant intent, that you intend to go home again after you complete your studies or your program here, that you have the financial ability to keep paying for your education, and that you have the language ability to complete what it is that you're here to do. So answer the questions concisely, be honest, but only answer what they're asking. You don't have to give extra information. Be aware they may conduct a social media review. So before you go into the consulate, maybe think about what you've been posting online. Is this what you want your embassy officer to look at? If you don't understand something, don't be afraid to ask. Ask them to repeat the question. Make sure you understand, because you want to answer questions right. It's not anything bad if you're nervous or you need to hear something again. And always be respectful and courteous. Even if someone's not being super nice to you, always be respectful, be courteous. If you have a very bad interaction, somebody's discriminated against you, is extremely nasty or rude, please let our office know. We'll want to know what the consulate was, what time you were there, and if you know the officer's name, so that we can make a report about that. Okay, so if everything goes well, you get a visa. When you get it, check the visa. Make sure that's your picture. Make sure it's the right visa category, F1 or J1. Check the spelling of your name. Make sure it's spelled right. And keep in mind the maximum length of your visa is up to the consulate, and it's also subject to what's called the reciprocity table, where there's a maximum amount. It's based on your country's relationship to the US and how long your country gives US citizens visas. So you can click this link, it'll show you what the maximum amount you can get, but you might get less. That's up to the consulate officer. Also note your number of entries. Generally, people get M for multiple entry, but you may get a number under entries, and that means you have a limited number, like 1 or 2 entries. Security check. So sometimes there's a delay that's called administrative processing. Those are usually resolved. Some cases may resolve in a few weeks. Some can take 60 to 90 days. Some take a really long time, longer than 6 months. We have information about our website. I'd say contact our office if you're worried about arriving on time for class. If you initially get administrative processing, it may clear up before you have to return to school. But if you're getting worried about the processing time, do reach out to us. But there generally isn't anything we can do to make it faster. We have no ability to speed anything up. Sorry, my cat is meowing. And if the worst happens, you're stuck abroad, you get a visa denial, don't panic. Just ask for the reason in writing. Make detailed notes about the interview, the officer's name, questions, your answers, and then email our office and recount the details, tell us the location, the consulate, the date and time of your interview, and tell us what you were asked, what you answered, and then wait for our response. We'll try to give you some support in understanding how you can reapply with additional information that addresses the denial reason. Denials are pretty rare, especially for continuing students, but it happens, and we want to help you. And finally, if you have dependents, so if you have F2 or J2 spouse or child, they may also need a visa if it's expiring. It's the same process. They need to have their own documents, so their passport, all of their own documents, but they need copies of yours. So they need a copy of your F1 I-20, your F1 passport, your proof of financial support for them and for you, your evidence of enrollment. You can see the Inviting Family webpage for more information. Okay, so we're at the end. We're a little short on time, but I will take time to take your questions. I'm going to start on the questions now. So when we reapply for visas next year, do we need a new I-20? I don't know what you mean. Your I-20 needs to be valid and unexpired, or you're on OPT, and you need a valid travel signature if you're applying for a visa. But you don't necessarily need a new I-20. You might need a new signature. It just depends on what your situation is. Is there any consideration for people who are transfer students and now they're I-20 for the new school, but the visa is under their old school's name? That's fine. If you transferred your I-20 from UC Berkeley, from your old school to UC Berkeley through a CVIS transfer, you have the same CVIS ID number. It's okay if you have a valid visa, it's unexpired, but it has the old school's name. That's fine because it's all part of the same record. So as long as that visa is not expired, you can still continue to use it until it expires, as long as you properly transferred your I-20 to Berkeley. I'm a PhD and I passed my qualifying exam. I want to renew my visa this winter, but it's highly possible I'll get checked for around a month, which means I will mostly arrive in the US later in the spring. Is this okay? So this is a tricky question. It might be better for advising so we can really better understand your question, where you're traveling, what your limitations are. What I can say here is, number one, you want to check with your department and see what's okay with them about how long you're gone, if you have responsibilities that you need to be back for. Number two, you can't be outside of the US for more than 5 months, or your F1 or J1 status will no longer be valid. So it's a problem if you get stuck for a long time. The third thing would be, I think as a PhD, it's not such a big deal because you're in research units, which are not online courses, it's research. So, but you do need to be fully enrolled for the spring, or you might have to make a decision if you need to withdraw from the spring if you don't want to pay for spring enrollment and you can't get here on time. So I would say maybe check in with our office about your concerns and make sure that your travel plan makes sense. Or if it might not be the best time to travel. Okay, I'm going to look at the chat too. Who does the automatic revalidation? The immigration officer at the airport. So it's at the border. Like when you're coming at the border, you just present your documents to Customs and Border Protection. There is no revalidation. They don't do anything. You're just presenting them documents, and then they would accept those documents because they meet those revalidation requirements. I'd recommend that you look at our webpage. We have some additional information there that may be helpful for you, including a printout you can take and show the officer if they don't know what's happening. I'm a first year at Haas. I haven't applied yet to OPT and I'm traveling. Is the passport with visa and I-20 sufficient? No, I mentioned a lot more documents too. So I'm not going to go over it all again. Maybe you joined late, but we named several different documents. So you've got your passport with a valid visa, your I-20, proof of financial support, proof of your enrollment, proof of your CVIS fee payment. So there's several more things that we advise you to travel with. And this is on our travel webpage as well. I'm a doctoral student from Pakistan. Can I renew my visa in Canada? So again, I talked a little while before about the risk involved in applying in a third country. I'd recommend that maybe you come to drop-in advising hours and talk to us about what your plans are. We generally advise getting a new visa in your home country, applying in a third country for a visa over the break, with a short window of return. We might not necessarily advise that, because third country applications can sometimes take longer or face more risk. So I'd advise you to come to drop-in hours and we can kind of talk to you about your plans, why you need to renew your visa right now, and see if that makes sense. Okay, any other questions? Please put them in the Q&A section. And I will pause for another minute or so to take some questions. But I also want to let you all go into your Friday evening. That's right before Thanksgiving time is coming up. Okay, well, I don't see any other questions. So thank you all for being here. And please, if you need questions answered, we do have advising hours next week. We have normal advising hours Monday and Tuesday, no advising Wednesday, and then we're closed Thursday, Friday. But we do have, advising hours again starting after the break. So please check in with us if you have questions. Thanks, you guys. Safe travels wherever you're going. And feel free to email us at internationaloffice@berkeley.edu. You'll get a response within 3 business days, or visit our drop-in hours. I don't recommend calling on the phone. It's better to go to advising or send an email. Calling on the phone, it's always a little hard to get somebody because we're busy advising. Okay, take care, everybody, and have a great weekend.